give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Deanne Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
Hello.
We know what to do about it. We know what to do about it.
We do. We're trying to do something about it, right?
That's all it takes, right? Yeah. Having a consciousness about it and then saying, let's try to do something.
Yeah, but the first step is to acknowledge and to witness and to presence the truth. And we just spent 4 days presencing the truth, have we not?
We sure did. Oh, the South. Oh, the heart of the nation. South Carolina was quite
in Charleston. Yes, we were. Yes, we were. Before we get into that, though, I wanted to bring into the space on the day that we're recording this is a day where I know, hopefully, all over this country and possibly in many parts of the world, we are commemorating the 78th anniversary marking of the Nakba Day, which is back in 1948, the start of the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians from their land by the Zionist entity that became Israel. And so I know I'm still, you can tell by my background, I'm not home. I am still traveling as I am in North Carolina visiting my sister. And while I was down south, I thought I would make a side stop. So I'm missing being with my peeps today in commemoration. But I know there are going to be gatherings all over the U.S. and hopefully all over the world, honoring the start of what for many people, including myself, is an event that was hidden and was not known by many, and I was one of those many for many, many years until October 7th of 2023. So I'm holding space in my heart for all of the folks in Palestine who are still being ethnically cleansed and being genocided on the daily. And hopefully the awakening that has happened in the past 2.5 years will continue to rise and will continue to facilitate people standing up and saying, no more, we're not going to do this anymore. So you identified that there was something else happening in May that was commemorated this time.
Oh, yeah. No, but I mean, it's important when we elevate and amplify some of these celebrations that we're having, especially in this month of May, to just take time to pause and to really let it sink in that we're talking about ethnic cleansing. We're talking about an entire demographic of human beings that are being displaced, that are being genocided, that are being targeted for existing in a place where somebody else wants to take over. And that really speaks into the same thing that happened on Turtle Island, that happened in the United States, right? And we're seeing this in real time. And then we're also seeing things happening legislatively on our side that is trying to return us back to the same type of targeting specific demographics and pushing people out of what is rightfully theirs. Because there's a really big question coming on as we're talking about the 14th Amendment. What is going to happen with voting rights and with citizenship and with who is going to be considered a part of the U.S. going forward as the demographics change and as people are pushing back. But that's why it's really important in May to be celebrating all of the diversity that makes the U.S. what it is and how people experience it today with so many different folks. May 15th, interestingly enough, is also a Peace Officer Memorials Day. So this is a time where folks are celebrating and honoring those who are in law enforcement. And we know in the South, I learned going on our Geechee tour that the Citadel is in South Carolina. And that Citadel is one of the places that when emancipation was happening, there was the training of the slave catchers, which then became our police force. There in South Carolina. And we had conversations about, Willie Lynch papers and how to like break folks that were slaves at that time, black body people or non-white body people, because there was a
Yeah.
ton of folks that were that have been inhabiting the land. So it's important to be thinking about that. It's important to be thinking about Asian American Pacific Islanders and all of the contributions that they did to this country, Haitian American awareness and all of the cultural wonderful flavor that they brought into this country. Like really, May has a lot of cultural diversity celebration. And on the 21st, we know that it's World Day of Cultural Diversity. So it's an opportunity for us to talk about this, which makes sense because we were in South Carolina, which is the heart of the nation. And I always come back to the South is the model for the narratives that we share in the world. Western civilization and white heteropatriarchy is strong and alive and vibrant. And it was so interesting to have that experience with you as we were going in. So let's talk about it. Let's talk.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to give the floor to you. How was the experience for you? So many different things. It was an action-packed 4 days.
It certainly was. It was supposed to be 5. First of all, it took forever trying to get off the island and get over to South Carolina, but finally being able to do it and arriving to you in the middle of the night on Saturday morning, which was
so excited you finally got there. I was like, oh, that was the moment because I'm such a control freak and I had no control over getting you there. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was a tough 24, 36 hours for sure.
But how about get me to the South for me to feel like get out? And I'm going to continue to say I'm going to continue to make that reference. So when I say the reference of Get Out, there is a movie by, can you help me with the filmmaker Keenan? I don't know his full name, but
Keenan Ivory Wayans.
I'm not the best person with holding up whole people's names, but I know Keenan. And the premise of that movie is basically soul snatching from black-bodied people by white-bodied people. And I'm saying it that way. And I know black women, white women, we had somebody, call me in on this. Specifically want to talk about this and get out in this manner because it was about stealing the souls out of bodies to help make bodies continue on. And the way that was depicted in the movie was that, somebody would get some tea, they would kind of get hypnotized, and everybody was so nice and so lovely in the space. But that was because their intention was to snatch your soul and be able to use your soul to continue on with extending their lives if they had a white body. And so that I was taught when I was having a conversation with my older daughter about what I was experiencing. And I was just like, I don't really know. Everyone is so extremely nice. Everyone is like so sweet, so welcoming and everything like that. But I did not feel like I was actually seen in the space, or I felt like I was seen in the space in a place. And the way that I would experience that would be like a shadow soul, meaning that I'm welcome and I'm wanted as a Black woman, but I'm welcome and wanted as a Black woman in my place. The best way that I have to describe that for myself was leaving. And I was in my Uber with the driver, another wonderful man, completely wonderful man in the way that we were communicating. I don't know the man at all, but we were communicating nicely on the ride to the airport.
Conversation, but I don't know him from Adam.
I don't know otherwise, but it was perfect because I learned benyah, come here. And those are like Geechee terminology for people who are visitors in the space or people who are native to South Carolina. And so as I was talking to this person and he said he was native, so I was like, oh, so you a benyah. I'm gonna laugh to myself and the car got real silent, super silent for a long pause.
Now, let me ask you a question. Is he white or Black?
He's white.
Okay.
It was a white male.
It
was a white male. It was a white male, but I can also say that coming from Florida, I'm curious if it was a white male. He didn't look completely white to me. His skin was white, but I would have thought because I'm coming from like the context of like Miami that maybe he has some Spanish in him, but no, he didn't. He was just a white male Southern man. And so the pause of me saying, "Oh, you a benyah," and the pause.
It was pause.
But I don't know, but
There was a pause.
here's another Southern component, right? Here's another Southern thing. And so
Mhm.
as the pause got and then he started moving his hair, and I'm one of the people that verbal is only 5% of communication. I look at how everybody is existing in the space so I can really
Right.
understand where they're coming from. And then ooh, I said, benyah might be a little too geeky for you to describe.
Ooh, you
Me.
went there. I'm
Absolutely,
not
because we were
surprised.
having a good conversation, and then he kind of like chuckled his body. And he's like, "Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm a benyah. I'm just a native of South Carolina." And I was like,
Yeah.
"I feel that. I understand." So the thing, and we laughed about it because we, without saying it, he was definitely very clear about the difference between using that language. Even he would
Mhm.
not ascribe to that in any way, shape, or form. And
Yeah.
that was my experience in South Carolina, that everybody is
Mhm.
in their comfort, in their place. And if you are not a white bodied human being, your place is not, does not have the same access and the same resource. You have
Right.
a place there, but you have a specific and certain place. And
Mm.
being someone who's northern context in the United States on Turtle Island, or Caribbean context where the same thing happens, because I had to like step back for a minute and say, when I'm on the islands in Jamaica, I am comfortable in my space because I'm surrounded by my people. I'm
Mhm.
surrounded by the food I like. I'm surrounded by the culture I like. And
Mhm.
so I understand being in the comfortability of what's like to you. Just in on US soil, it's very strange. It's weird. That's the word that I can use to
Yeah.
describe. It's just weird to be in a place in 2026 where there is a clear distinction between whiteness and
Mhm.
blackness very clearly. And if anybody says that the US has gotten to a different place of understanding, I'm also concerned that the US and those that are in administration and leadership right now appreciate, and all the people who voted for this, white women, to return back to this kind of status quo, you in your place, you can be around me, but
Mhm.
in service to me, or as a shadow soul to what, to my existence. And
Yeah.
that was really interesting to experience. So it's very slave mentality, still very existent in that space. And that was uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you just captured it all in a nutshell for sure, in terms of the dichotomy or the paradox of how, this is why I wanted to go to Charleston for the conversation that we were going to have, because
Mhm.
it is a manifestation, it is a personification of that dynamic that happens
Mhm.
all across our country, but it is so amplified in Charleston. And maybe others wouldn't use the word amplified to describe it, but for me, and it sounds like it landed on you in a similar fashion, that it is in every aspect of that city
Absolutely.
that it's super friendly, hospitality geared. I mean, Condé Nast rated number one city of hospitality every year. And it's all, yeah, bless your heart. It's all, come on in, sweetie. What can I get you? As long as you abide by the
That's cool.
guidelines and the structures that exist within. So to say to a white man that he's a benyah is, I mean, first of
Silence.
all, I'm surprised he even knew what the term was.
Mm.
Actually, that's
Oh, okay.
first, because I lived there for many years and had not heard the Benya Kumya
Oh,
dynamic. So I'm surprised he even knew what it was. But then beyond that, he would have. I would imagine, not knowing him, but being a white person that lived in that city for 22 years, I would imagine that he would have resonated with speaking to heritage, speaking to a native of Charleston is or a native of South Carolina is definitely a phrase that you hear in white circles when people, because you don't meet a lot of natives, especially in Charleston, and people
oh,
that were
interesting.
born and raised there. There are a lot of transplants. There are a lot of people from Ohio. There are even bumper stickers that speak to how many people are there from Ohio. So yeah, we have there are a lot of people that have come, and in the
Mm.
white circles, they would say come from off. So, so a
Yeah.
person moved to Charleston, you would say that they came from off. They're not from here. They came
They're
from off.
all-
Yeah.
They're a little off.
So yeah, they came from off. So it's funny to me. It's not funny to me, but surprising me that he even knew what that phrase was. And I'm actually appreciative that he was able to even verbalize that that isn't what he would use to describe his heritage, because that's a big word that people in Charleston use, the heritage.
And everybody who was in Charleston that I met, regardless of how they identify, ethnically, they were really very supportive. Like, what is the word that I want to use? Like, they were really like about being from Charleston.
They were on Team Charleston. Absolutely.
They ride the flags of Charleston for sure. And again, I'm imagining it's about comfortability, because if you're making a decision that you're comfortable in how you are received and experienced in your community, then I understand. Interestingly, how that could make sense. Like, where you stand, and there's, I guess, some comfort in knowing where you stand. Another thing that highlighted as I'm leaving in this Uber ride was the person was talking about how many people are moving into the Charleston, because we were driving by the big Boeing building that's there. And so I was like, is that having an impact on, like, the demographics to this gentleman? Because I was curious from the people that I had been around, after I identified that he was a person that was native to South Carolina, or his heritage was South Carolinian. I was curious as to like how he was experiencing things. And he was talking about how people are coming in from, a lot of New Yorkers are coming in. He was talking about a lot of people from Ohio coming in, and that is changing things according to what he is experiencing. And he is in hopes that it doesn't change things. He wanted things to remain the same as it was. And I was just like, I was like, yeah, it not changing is not so comfortable to me. And then he was, so we were really having this, because it was a nice, again, everyone is so open and welcoming. And it was a nice conversation that had a lot of pauses, because we were trying to be in communication with each other in our respective spaces. But he also was giving me a lot of grace, because he knew I wasn't from there. I was a come here.
Right.
Or a be for a moment. Yeah. I did say I want to bring my young people back so that they can experience it. And what my older one was like, no, that's not what I want to be doing. I don't want to experience that. Why? You told me what it is, and I don't need to see it. I don't need to experience it. I don't want to know about it. And I was like, I hear you saying that, but until you really understand, until your body is present on the place, you're not going to have the context of really understanding, like, the insidious racism that this nation holds in its heart. Because it is the heart of the nation.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the Gullah Geechee tour that we took with Godfrey. And I've got a picture of the three of us together that we can put up to show his amazing face and talk about his journey with us that day. The shape of Charleston, the peninsula, Charleston proper, because the Charleston area is very spread out, as you experienced. We spent a lot of time in the car trying to get from one place to another. There's a lot of traffic. You got to go over a lot of bridges. The topography of the area, because of all of the marshlands and the rivers, makes it difficult. It's not like a typical city grid where you can there are 6 ways to get anywhere. You're lucky if you've got 2 routes to get to anywhere. And you usually have to go over a bridge. And a lot of times that bridge is backed up. So we spent a lot of time in the car. But if you look at an aerial view, an aerial map of Charleston proper, you will see that the peninsula itself is shaped like a human heart. And that was one of the things that Godfrey really spoke a lot about during our tour with him. And why I wanted to go to Charleston to have the dialogue that we ended up having when we taped the episode there is it really is a manifestation of everything and could also be such a place of healing if the powers that be in Charleston would have the courage to explore that. But when you were talking about how so many people, either white or non-white identified, when they're from Charleston, when they live in Charleston, they love Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
Even Godfrey, who expressed many, he was telling the real story, the real truth about the history of Charleston, and showing us the nods in all the architecture and the symbolism that was in the ironwork and all of those things. Even though all of that is there and he sees it every day and he knows what it is, he still loves Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found when I lived there, because I had a similar experience of it that you did when I got more familiar with the Black community and developed relationships and friendships with people from that community. And I'm like, why don't y'all hate this place? Why aren't you running away in droves? Why? I don't understand. And there's a we are going to plant our feet. You are not going to make us. This is our land. Our ancestors built this. Our ancestors bled on this land, and we are here, and we are not going anywhere. And it's just it has a different energy to it for me than the white identified humans that want to say, this is my heritage. This, I own this. My ancestors, built this. So they'll use that terminology. And so, yeah, it's so interesting how the juxtaposition of those two almost ownership sensibilities toward this area. And yeah, so there's just so many layers.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm curious, like, you lived in Charleston for 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then your introduction into diversifying and expanding your circle of people happened like later on, after we, experienced some tragedies in the nation. Yep. But before that, I am curious as to what was the thing about Charleston that held you for 2 decades? Like, what was the thing that drew you to being in that community and living in the way that you did there before you were?
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
Yes.
My husband at the time and my daughter was born out in Boulder, Colorado. We were living out in Colorado, and we both decided that we wanted to move back east because we wanted our daughter. My daughter was the first grandchild on my side of the family, and we didn't have a lot of connection with his side. So we wanted to be closer. He did have family in Georgia, so let me not say that we weren't connected to them at all, but we wanted to go back east and be closer to family. And we picked Charleston because it was centrally located to where everybody was. I had family in North Carolina. He had family in Georgia. We had friends in Florida. So we were like, it was 3 to 4 hours away from everybody, not close enough that they could just show up without announcement, but close enough that we could get to them within a day. And the intention was for Mimi, my daughter, to have, connectivity with her people and be able to develop, because she was a toddler when we moved there. So it really was more about, and I had gotten accustomed in Boulder to having the mountains, right? Because we were right at the base of the Flatirons. And I didn't want to move somewhere that didn't have something, either mountains or water, which I'm not a big fan of the East Coast mountains. They're very dark and kind of misty, hence the Smoky Mountains name. And so that wasn't appealing to me. So the water, Charleston on the coast, was the draw. And it just really, location was one of the biggest draws. I was oblivious at that time to the stories, to the narrative, to the juxtaposition of the narrative versus the real narrative, to the fact that I even had ancestors that lived in Charleston that were shipbuilders in Charleston back during slavery times. And so, yeah, totally oblivious to all of that piece of it. It really was just location, geography, and access to family members. So,
okay, so now, but let me deep dive and ask you a question though. But was there a sense of, so all of those things in order environmentally makes it a good place, but then going there still 22 years ago,
Yeah.
there's still the auction blocks.
Yeah.
There's still the hanging trees. There's
Yeah.
still the ropes or the chains on some of the houses. There's still the iron work there. And
Yeah. I
all of those
was,
things are real and all of those things are there. And it's like to see those and to make a decision. And this is not a judgment. This is a curiosity about white comfort and what,
Mhm.
and like being able to move into that. And like, as a white bodied female person, also
Mhm.
a white woman, I'm going to say all the things for people, but
Yes.
what did that feel like? And I'm really asking this question also with a little bit of intention, because if we're thinking about our current administration right now, and we're thinking about the reality that a majority of white women voted for this administration that we have existence, and even if we're looking at the other demographic numbers, because Black identified people are 13% of the US population, a very
Right.
small percentage, which means that we're talking about 80%. We're talking about a larger and growing Hispanic ethnic population also.
Mhm.
But we know that white women kind of administered the folks into leadership for this administration.
Right.
What is it about that type of comfort? Because administration is trying to return to this model of what I
Mhm.
experienced in South Carolina. What is it about the comfortability of this type of environment and existence that were you drawn to? Because yes, there's these other things, but there's also something about, I'm choosing a house, I'm choosing a place, we're going downtown. I know that there is this history of celebrating a slave economy and celebrating a separation, a clear separation amongst people. And so
Right.
I'm really, that's what I'm curious about, how you exist in that. And I'm hearing that you're saying that you were oblivious to it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that, how can you be oblivious to it when it's
Right.
so blatantly in
Prevalent.
your
Yes.
face?
Yes. 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 I
Yeah.
really appreciate the question and the deeper dive into it. Yeah. No, I was not. I mean, I knew the story that of Charleston that had been taught to me, right? I knew
Which
the
was what?
antebellum the
Tell us about
antebellum industrial complex, the hoop skirts and the beautiful homes and the mint juleps and the sitting on the porch and all of the narratives that spun it as this beautiful, nostalgic throwback to a kindler and gentler time. That's what I had been taught. So when you speak to comfortability, I didn't even realize that that was something that I was not in touch at all with my level of comfort, that every space is built for my comfort, I didn't even, you know, I'm looking back on it and thinking and cringing, thinking that I was so oblivious to the so obvious story. And I knew slavery as a topic of reality that happened in this country, and that but I hadn't even investigated my people that participated in it. I hadn't done that deep dive to understand. So it was, and I even the first subdivision that we bought a house in had plantation in the name. I mean, many of them do in Charleston. That's a favorite name to tack on to the end of a subdivision. But I lived in two different subdivisions before my awakening that both have. I'm sorry, the balloons. Damn it!
Blue
I
plantations.
don't know why it does that.
Oh,
I,
even
yeah.
StreamYard wants to celebrate slavery.
Oh my God.
Lord.
But I lived in two different subdivisions over the course of my time in the Charleston area that both had plantation in their names, and was oblivious to how disgusting that was and how messed up that was and how all of the things. And so I
Okay,
don't
can I
know if
just
that
stop you for
answers
a
your
second?
question, except to just say I had totally bought the indoctrination that made me oblivious to the white supremacy that was all around me and that I was participating in.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
can you tap into, well, it's really hard to then become conscious of the harm of the space to
Mm.
remember what it was like before you knew what the harm was. And that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
get into, because I'm sure that there's a ton of people, we saw them walking around
Yeah.
comfortable in the existence, and even people from all diversity. I saw them coming into the space when we went to the market and going up on the slave auction block model and taking pictures. White folks, black folks, green folks. There's no way that I would ever go. I mean, I know I've played in guillotine, so like, I just want to be clear and totally comprehensive about how we can have these cultural misappropriations of harm, because I have gone to Disney and stuck my head in a guillotine knowing that French people had their heads cut off. Okay, so I've done that. And that is equivalent to me, and I recognize the harm in that. And that is equivalent to me in seeing people getting up on an auction block and taking pictures like, hey, people were sold.
Let me put my hand in these shackles so that I can have, well, one of my friends coined the term Confederate Disneyland, and that is what it is. It is, and to your point of going to Disneyland and getting in the guillotine, it is Confederate Disneyland. It is taking the story of the Confederacy and slavery and enslavement and all of the harm that happened, and weaving it into a narrative that yes, it happened. I mean, this is what I grew up with. This is what I was taught. Yes, it happened. It's over now, which I know now is not true, but it's over now, right? And there is no there was no understanding in my white brain of the harm. There was no, it was like that part of it was completely removed from my indoctrination. And why I didn't ask questions, why I didn't go, but wasn't there harm? It is all part of that get out mentality, that get out setup where you are swimming in it and have absolutely no idea of the toxicity of what you're swimming in, which is by design. And I know that's very hard I would imagine that's very hard for people who have lived in that harm and have experienced that harm and still experience it to this day, to not understand the obliviousness, to not understand the comfortability, and saying it out loud sounds ridiculous. It sounds like it's the most obvious paradox to me now that I see it. Yeah. But I didn't see it then. And I was still living in that level of indoctrination where the questioning didn't even happen. It was accepted. It was just so purely accepted into the fabric of my being that I did not even realize that I needed to ask questions about it, that there might be curiosities about why am I standing on this slave block and celebrating the fact that humans were sold. It is and please understand, I'm not making excuses at all. I'm just trying to take a deep dive into like that paradox of how indoctrination can be so deep. And I wonder, I'm thinking about the juxtaposition or the similarity to people of Jewish faith who I know have gone to Israel for their birthright trips. That's the name they call them. And how they went there and they were fed all of the indoctrination, and many of them went through all of that birthright trip and never saw what was right in front of them, which was the apartheid state and the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. They didn't see it. And to me, that feels very similar. It's all bred out of the same, it's all out of the same cake mix,
Yeah, the psychosis and the psychology of falling into the comfort of the status quo, right? Because the experience for me was existing in a delusion that you've created that is comfortable for you. And the delusion crosses all demographics of people who are there. And so I don't want folks listening from South Carolina to say that I'm calling you delusional. I'm just saying that you're existing, the way that I experience is that people are existing in what they're used to existing in. And there's a comfortability in that. So there's
Yeah.
less questions. And when you sit in a position of privilege and power, and I'm even thinking about where I have privilege and power, that is a state where, because you're in your comfort, you don't even have to question or think about things that don't come to mind. You just
Right.
don't, because you're in your privilege.
Just
You just don't think about it. You don't question it.
No.
It just never comes up because it's not in your sphere of understanding to do. So it really is, I'm bringing that up in particular because it really is important for when we talk about cultural diversity and celebrating all of the things that we celebrate in May, having a more expansive group of experiences and perspectives and relationships creates a richer understanding, because the blinders can come off of the delusion, and that doesn't mean that there's going to be any new harm. It's a better understanding so that you can know how to engage the space with intention, to the point of me being able to have a conversation with an Uber man who is a native of South Carolina. And we had a great conversation in the car, and he understood my perspectives and I understood his perspectives. And I know that we both expanded each other's understanding of the world and relationships. And that is what I'm hoping that we get to, because that's what I give AF about.
Yeah. Thank you for all of that. It was, it has been an interesting process. And I'm really glad that you brought back to my kind of consciousness the fact that I was there for so many years before I woke up. I mean, I moved there in 99 and I woke up in 2015. So that is a long stretch of time to be living surrounded in that comfortability. And, I didn't even understand that every space was built for my comfort. I didn't even truly understand that. So the comfortability was so part of the fabric of every day that I'd ever experienced in my entire life that I wasn't aware of it at all. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it, which is where I am today. So now I go back there and I see it in such a different light. I see the things everywhere now. That's why I left, because I had such a hard, I was to the point where I was angry all the time. I was like, I couldn't. And, I know that there's arguments to be made that I should have left because I should have stayed and kept doing the work. And, I have kept doing the work. I took what I learned in Charleston with me when I left, which I know that some white folks who run away from discomfort maybe don't do. They run away early enough. I was in it for enough years. It broke me open enough that when I did leave, I took that with me. I took the awareness with me, and I don't think stop doing the work. And that is, to me, that's my what's the word? Justification maybe for leaving the space and not staying in the trenches and doing that work in that city, because I felt like I needed to leave to dissipate some of the anger, to not be seeing the harm that was being done to my friends every single day, no matter where I was, so that then I could do the next thing, take what I learned and move it on to the next thing. So it was good for me. This was the first time I've been back to Charleston for this length of time since I left. I mean, I've been back maybe 2 or 3 times, and it's only for like 24 hours. And I go and visit people that I love and want to see, and then I'm out, So this was the most time I've spent there since I left. And it was a healing for me. I was ready to go. Don't get me wrong. When I left, I was really ready to get the hell out, but I was glad that I spent the time that I did, and with you, because I feel like I healed part of myself in the time that you and I were together there. So so it's good.
Well, I thank you for that, and thank you for the invitation to be there. And I really want to be able to, in another episode, deep dive into what you're speaking into. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so we're going to kind of go through some of the things that we saw when we were on the Gullah Geechee tour, and, how we culminated that with an expression of some artistic poetry. So
That was a
we'll see you
day.
next time. Yes,
Yeah,
it was a
we will
day.
see you. Stay tuned for that conversation. That'll be great. Thank you.
All right. Talk soon.
Why do I give a fuck? Why do
Thanks for
I
joining
give a
us.
fuck?
Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why do I give a fuck?
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Deanne. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.